This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. It's Tuesday today, which means we're doing a top 5 list, and the topic under discussion is that of astonishingly good, flabbergastingly good, amazingly good young guitarists. People that when you hear them play, you think you simply have not been alive long enough to have got that good, and yet there you are playing like that. The kind of players that make you think maybe there was something in that legend of Robert Johnson and the Crossroads and, kind of the pact with the devil and all of that. But anyway, yeah, amazingly good young guitar players. People who've blown me away over the years when I first heard them. So let's get started with
Joe Bonamassa.
Yes, now as an established solo artist these days and member of a fantastic band, Black Country Communion, which is my favourite of his ventures, I got to tell you, I just think that band they had some kind of chemistry and something a bit special. Something I don't quite kind of get from Joe's solo output, I've got to be honest. I've tried getting into his music, but it just never quite sort of, fantastic player, can't fault him as a player, songwriter, singer. He ticks all the boxes, and yet somehow it doesn't give me the tingle. But you simply cannot deny the guy's talent. And I first came across that talent back in the mid-1990s when Joe was 13 years old. So you can kind of Google that, what year that was. I seem to remember it was one Sunday afternoon when I was bored. I had nothing to do, and there was only 4 or 5 maybe channels on TV back then. We hadn't got the cable and satellite options. Well, not in our house anyway. And I think it was on Channel 4, they were doing a documentary about this band called Bloodline, who I think they were all the offspring of, famous or established musicians. And the youngest member of the band was the lead guitarist, the young chap called Joe Bonamassa, as I say, 13 years old. And there was, kind of shots of them playing on stage, and I think there was a shot of Joe with his guitar teacher, certain Mr. Danny Gatton at the time. And there were kind of shots of them in the studio tracking songs for an album, and Joe's playing was just incredible. As I said in the intro, how you haven't been alive long enough to have got that good. Where does that come from? An astonishingly good guitar player at 13 years old, and I knew he was going to go on to bigger things then. Didn't hear anything more of Joe Bonamassa for a few years, and then suddenly he seems to be on the cover of Guitarist magazine every month. I was the intervening years, from that kind of TV documentary that I saw in the 90s to, when he's suddenly this big grown-up rock god guitar hero. I kept telling people about this fellow called Joe Bonamassa, and then suddenly people started recognising the name, and it's like, oh yes, I saw him in Guitarist magazine. So again, blew me away when I first heard him, and any list like this of astonishing young guitarists, he had to be on it. Next.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Yeah, now in the late 90s, again, guitar magazines, you remember when you used to buy a bunch of those every month, Guitarist, Guitar Player, Guitar World, Guitar Techniques, all of those kind of magazines. There was a period, I think about 97, 98, when suddenly this one name keeps cropping up, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and everybody's saying he's, kind of carrying the torch for that sort of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas blues style of playing. And this naturally piqued my interest. And then, as I said, we didn't have all of the cable and satellite TV kind of stuff back then in our house, but a friend of mine did. And I was round there one day, and he had one of the music channels on VH1, MTV, something like that. And there was actually this kind of mini show on about the Joe Satriani G3 gig. It's usually Joe, isn't it, and Steve Vai and then they invite somebody else along for the ride. So, whichever year that was, they had Kenny Wayne Shepherd as the third guitarist on tour, and they showed some footage of a gig where there's Steve and Kenny and Joe jamming together, and what a performance. You could tell Kenny was like really raising his game to big up the kind of slightly shreddy kind of aspect of what he does, but more than anything else, the guitar tone, the feel, the phrasing, the maturity beyond his years, that I think he was probably 18, 19 years old at the time, that was just incredible. And you just think, it's like he sprang forth fully formed like this, So I immediately went out and bought the album, which was, I think, is either his first or second album, called Trouble Is, and that's just a fantastic album. If you're not familiar with it, go and check it out. The version, I think it's the old Bob Dylan song, Everything Is Broken, that's on that album, for me is the definitive version of that song. But yeah, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, a teenager who absolutely, he got up there and, kind of held his own with the likes of Vai and Satriani. Indeed, yeah, enough said. Next.
Tommy McLaughlin.
Now, this young chap, when I first heard about him, was 9 years old. I was 21 years old. I think the year was 1988. And, I was home from college, visiting my parents, and there was the local TV news show. Those of us from this part of the world will no doubt remember a show called Northern Life, and there was a news item about a young chap who was from this neck of the woods, hence he was on the local TV news, called Thomas McLaughlin, who sort of then changed his name, adopted the stage persona of Tommy McLaughlin, and he was 9 years old. And I have this kind of memory of him with his dad, he sat on his dad's shoulders on stage, I think at Newcastle City Hall, with an Ibanez Gem Steve Vai guitar, doing the most incredible kind of 80s shreddy kind of virtuoso rock metal kind of guitar parts. I think he actually did end up opening up for Ozzy Osbourne when he was that young, just ridiculous. He later became good friends with Steve Vai, who became something of a mentor to him, and I think Steve actually gave him one of his own personal guitars, might be one of his 7 strings. Then it's like, you kind of forget about such things, don't you? And, you move on and you get on with your life. And I'd completely forgotten about Tommy McLaughlin. And then one of his videos, because he's on YouTube, popped up in my suggestions, and I thought, I remember this guy. He's all grown up now, and he's still making music, and he's still a fantastic guitar player. So I'll see if I can find a link to one of his earlier performances, as I say, when he was like about that tall, and see if you get as blown away by him as I was. Next.
Shuggy Otis.
Yeah, Shuggy Otis. Again, another incredible kind guitar player. I discovered him well after the fact. Back in the 80s when I was at college, I was, kind of having a look through a friend's record collection, as you did at the time, and found this album by Al Cooper, who I knew was, on... I think it was on a bunch of Hendrix recordings, the Electric Ladyland kind of era. I thought, I recognise that name. Let's see what this is all about. And guest guitarist Shuggy Otis, and I'm put the album on, and I'm having a listen to it, and it's really good, kind of soulful blues guitar playing. And I'm reading the sleeve notes of the album at the time, and you get to the end of the sleeve notes, and written by Al Cooper, and he says Shuggy Otis is 15 years old. This 15-year-old is playing like, again, I've mentioned this with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, maturity beyond his years. It's not just the flashiness or the chops, which is there, in a bluesy kind of way on this guy's playing. But it's just the sense of phrasing, the guitar tone, the melodic sensibilities, and the emotional maturity that you can detect in the playing, that you just think, how does a 15-year-old have that much life experience to be able to kind of let it come out in his playing to that degree? Absolutely astonishing player. I actually forgot about that album for many, many years until, because when I first went from vinyl to CD and then from CD to MP3 and so on, some albums kind of slip through the cracks, don't they? You forget about them, or they're not available yet on the new format. But then the album cropped up as one of my suggestions on Spotify a couple of years ago, and I thought, hello, yes, let's see if that is as good as I remember. Dear me, it is. Shuggy Otis, 15-year-old guitar player. When I first heard him, blew me away. Next.
Johnny Lang.
Yes, now I discovered this guy round about the same time as I discovered Kenny Wayne Shepherd, because Kenny was quite the big thing. And as is always the case, or certainly was when record labels ruled the roost in the late 90s, and perhaps not so much nowadays. But when one young blues guitarist starts making a big name for himself and shifting loads of albums and merchandise and what have you, all of the other record labels start hunting around to find somebody who can do the same sort of thing for them. And Johnny Lang was very much, I think he was overshadowed a bit by Kenny Wayne Shepherd, but he is every bit as good a player in a different way. Whereas Kenny Wayne Shepherd was a 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old who sounded a lot like Stevie Ray Vaughan, with that kind of brash, kind of funky Texas blues kind of thing going on. Johnny Lang was much more kind of laid back. There's horn sections and backing vocalists on his music, and incredibly soulful voice. It's, what have I got written down here? Imagine someone who sings like Otis Redding and plays guitar like a mixture between Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, and Rory Gallagher. In a 18-year-old kind of white boy. It's an incredible combination. And like the album, I think it's the album called Lie to Me. That's certainly the big track off that album. Just incredible to think that the person you're listening to singing like that and playing like that isn't out of their teens when they're kind of doing it. And it's, again, common thread running through all of these players I'm talking about today. Maturity beyond their years, not just in terms of the technical level of ability that they've got to on the guitar, but which is there. I wouldn't be talking about, there wouldn't be amazing players otherwise, but it's just what they do with that level of technique and how they use it, and how they use it to express incredible, as I say, emotional maturity. So, Johnny Lang, that is he is the last guitarist on this list of amazing young guitarists. People that, in a lot of cases, I would look at them and think, I've got shirts older than you, son. And in many ways, you can kind of get a little bit despondent, thinking, if I practice till the end of time, I'll never be quite that good, and you've still got kind of more decades ahead of you than I have. But on the other hand, it does, as I said, make you think, well, the future of the instrument is in good hands. The baton has been passed on to, worthy successors. And for all of the kind of sad state of the music business and, auto-tune, beat correction, all of that kind of stuff that we all hear far too much of in mainstream music now, it is reassuring to know that there is, there always have been new generations of players coming through. Christone Kingfish Ingram, there's an honourable mention for him on this list, who are just carrying the torch for honest to goodness real music played by real musicians with soul, guts, passion, and I'll say it again, maturity. And that is the video for today, folks. Hope you've found it entertaining in some small way, and if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not drop me a like while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday 5pm UK time, where we drink beer and talk about music and guitars, and often that is where topics for these top 5 Tuesdays crop up. I think this one did on the Friday live stream. As I say, 5pm UK time every Friday. Come and join us. It's fun. Great way to kick off the weekend. I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.